All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the special meeting of the village board to order at 6:22. We have, in addition to myself, President Kay, Trustee Arndorfer, Trustee Stokely, Trustee Lynn, and Trustee McGovern here. So we do have forum. We have one, has the meeting been posted? The meeting has been properly noticed and posted according to law. All right, we have one, we're going to turn us this evening, consider resolution 2024-08 to combine wards for this July 2nd, 2024 special primary election and July 30th, 2024 special election for the 4th Wisconsin Senate District seat. This comes to us from Clerk Carroll. It is accompanied with an explanation and the order, and the reason for the request. It also comes to us with an email from Trustee Stoprian asking some additional questions that have been answered. And with that, I would, and Trustee McGovern. Oh, Trustee McGovern. Oh, I apologize. I missed the emails. And with that, I would open you up for questions or a motion.
I mean, my questions were answered, so I feel okay with the proposal.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect?
Yes, if you just give me a moment.
You don't have to. I have. Okay, Trustee Stoprian,
I move to approve resolution 2024-08 to combine wards for the July 2nd, 2024 special primary election and July 30th, 2024 special election for the 4th Wisconsin Senate District seat.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Trustee Stoprian, seconded by Trustee Arndorfer. Any discussion? Trustee Stoprian?
I just have one suggestion. Are these proposed signage? Could we somewhere put on there, because I think a lot of people like me were like, why are we voting? It would be helpful if you could just put, due to the vacation of the seat by the resignation of Senator Lena Taylor.
Yes.
You will help a lot of people understand.
Are we allowed to have signage? I didn't know if there's
The postcard?
Okay.
The postcard was in your hand, so.
Okay. I didn't know if election is restricting communication.
Names.
Trustee McGovern?
Yeah, I would just make a suggestion to, when we're communicating with the public about this special election, just to let people know that their polling place this fall will be the same as normal. This is just, we're doing this for this low turnout race to, since we're limited on staff and state funding, and just so there's no confusion this fall, that would be my only suggestion.
And you might add the hour. It does say the day.
Okay.
But I mean, we're printing it out.
Yeah, that could be easily done by saying, wards one and will be combined for the special election on Tuesday, July 30th, 2024. Only. Thank you.
All right, hearing no further discussion, this will be a roll call. Trustee Lynn?
Yes.
Trustee McGovern?
Yes.
President McKay? Aye. Trustee Stoprian? Aye. Trustee Arndorfer?
Aye.
Motion carried. 5-0. Thank you. That concludes our business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Trustee Stoprian, seconded by Trustee Lynn. Any objections? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 6:06. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
I'm assuming that everybody has read the memo, has contacted the village manager with any questions. We do, have some, printed or email communication from, trustee Stokbrand and trustee Bursink, who are in communication with the village manager. So we have that information. And so again, I'm assuming that everybody has read the information, understands the information, has contacted the village manager or director of treatment trial for additional, clarification if needed, and that's been shared with everyone. So we won't be going through a full presentation this evening. And a lot of it is recap. So both bodies have, discussed these topics off and on over the past several years. This comes to us after a hiatus, due to, taking care of some other things that were on the village manager's plate, and also not having more information. So at this time, it is brought forward, that the two items being, determining the future of the public works site, and facility. As everyone knows, the public works facility, is, deteriorating, and in the 6 months since we talked about it last, the roof has not stopped leaking.
The building is not in code still. We still don't have enough room for the fleet, and it continues to age. So it's been 2 years since we got the confirmation of all those conditions. So those 2 years of deterioration. It is rebuilding on that site, will not meet the needs of a contemporary level of service. Come on in. Thanks. Sorry, we got going. And so at this point, in order to get additional information about a potential alternative site, we need to either engage a commercial broker or circulate an RFP for development of that site with an alternative site presented. Those are the two pathways to moving forward. They are non-binding at this time, but there is no other way to get new information. I also want to thank staff for conducting the series of public information sessions that we did last year. The second item pertaining to specifically to affordable housing, that also has been in discussion for several years after the TID1 extension vote that was taken. Shout out former trustee Carpenter for being part of that board and leadership. We started with education so that we knew what tools were available to us in policies. Thank you to the CDA for engaging in all that discussion, reviewing in detail what is available to Shorewood, what's practical and what's not. One of the issues that we continue to, that we always get caught between as a municipality is that we look like a city, we act like a city, but we are not a city. And so there are policies and programs that simply are not viable for us to apply within this municipality. So thank you for doing that work and bringing it forward to us. As you'll recall, there was a recommendation to go with trying to expedite the number of affordable rental units by using existing properties. Since then, the memo reflects that that is not a viable pathway forward. Also, in the meantime, the Milwaukee Community Development Alliance has done a lot of work to establish the Milwaukee Community Land Trust, and there's a lot more information about that option. So for that reason, we called everyone together tonight for these two items. So without doing a major presentation, I just gave you a walkthrough of the memo, so you're welcome. At that point, I would like to probably hear from the CDA first in terms of coming back together. It's been a while since you all convened, and what your thoughts are regarding the 2 points of discussion this evening, being to develop an RFP for affordable housing on the village-owned parking lots, and the possibility of developing the public works site should we find a relocation. Chair Kraus?
Sure. Do I need to do anything to make this work?
Just, no, but if you could talk directly into the mic.
Got it. Well, it has been a long time since we have all been together, and I don't think we've really discussed as a group too much about these 2 items. So I guess I'm going to speak just from my perspective.
You might want to talk a little. I don't love
Even-
hearing my voice. I have to. So
Gotta
like
get so close.
I know it's uncomfortable.
Gotta get lessons from Joe on how to use a microphone. Anyway, so what I was saying was we haven't been together very much in the last few months, and I think I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I believe, in my opinion, I really would like to see the village essentially let the market know that we have sites that are available for housing, and we would like to receive some proposals or at least ideas on what developers might think of developing those sites, putting housing, because I think we all would agree we can use more housing in the village and everywhere in Milwaukee County with the housing crisis that's going on. And if we can get some affordable units within those buildings, if they do get built, that to me seems like the best option for us to pursue. And then, and I guess that I'm talking about we have 3 publicly owned lots, not including the DPW site, correct? So specifically, that's what I'm talking about with that. And then with the DPW site, again, my personal opinion on that, I don't think we've taken a stand necessarily as a CDA, as a group, but my personal stand on that is that it does make a lot of sense for us to really start seriously looking at options, because it's pretty clear what we have is not going to work. It's not enough room. We can't expand that site. It is a very highly desirable site from a development standpoint. So I think it's very possible if we can find a location to move the DPW site, we can find a developer to do something great on that site, generate tax revenue, get more housing, potentially have some affordable units mixed in with that, and really fix our issue that we have, and then also gain more housing in the process. And I understand that's a while. That's going to take a while, because we're talking years to even get off the site, probably. Is that right? Most likely.
From a planning perspective, just for estimation purposes, year one would be finding the new site, number two, second year designing for the new site, and then third, moving off the current site.
Yeah.
At least that's how we have just listed it for estimation purposes for financial performer within our long range plan.
Right, right. And then we also, as a part of this, which I don't think you mentioned, is we have the extension of TID
Mhm.
1. Is it
Mhm.
TID 1?
Mhm.
We have a little over $2 million that we can put towards affordable housing in some way, shape, or form. And I think that may be necessary if any one of these parcels do get developed, that we may have to participate in that. But we won't really know what that looks like until we see a proposal, because it's just too hard to know what that could be at this point. But it is nice that we at least have some dollars that we could put towards it, whether it's for financing or to help with building parking or whatever that might be. So I guess that's my thought. I think we should maybe each
Mhm.
of us on the CDA
Mhm.
kind of talk. So Jessica, I don't know if you want to just give your thoughts on that.
On your comments or?
No,
just my
just-
own
Well, you
thoughts?
can comment
Yeah.
on my comments, or you can just in general on what we're discussing right now.
So yeah, I mean, I would agree. It has definitely been a very long time since we have met. And I think on sort of the three sites, in particular with DPW, for me, one of the things that I value the most about our community is our historic charm. And while the DPW site, I understand, needs some improvement, there is some history, and I feel very strongly about whatever we do, that needs to be preserved. I also have questions about what came out of the study. I did not review the study. There was a study of the DPW yard and what was the recommendation out of that study. I don't know what that was. If it is to remodel, to move, I do have a lot of like logistical questions of how we move DPW out of the village. I also have just some questions about concerns about the parking, the three parking sites, and what that does to eliminating parking and parking usage or car usage on those lots, because those all have a fair number of permits. And so is there some ability to preserve that and build housing? I think we did talk a lot in CDA, if I remember correctly, about how we don't want a completely affordable housing building only. We want things to be integrated, and we want people to be able to live in a mixed use unit, sort of like at the Lighthouse use unit.
Mixed income.
Yes, thank you. And then, I mean, I think those are my initial thoughts. I just have some concerns about in particular, the DPW yard, and how that would work for affordable housing.
Joe?
Yeah, thank you. I guess in real estate, we look at the highest and best use of property as one rubric or one measure. And I think anyone would purposely put the DPW in that site now if they had their choice. Seems like its time has come and gone. Like the best use as defined by the village, where one of our goals is for affordable housing. Seems like that's a better use. I'm also a property owner in Riverworks, a mile from here, which seems like the likely home for DPW. That seems like a no-brainer to me to move it there. That was a good use of there's vacant land there that would be utilized then, and it would open up one of the very few resources that the village has, which is the land that it owns. Because there is no more. We can't grow outward at all. So I'm kind of in line with what President Krause said earlier in terms of my thinking. I also feel like we're limited by our own imaginations. And I would love to see what a developer or an architect could come up with that we're not even imagining, that preserves maybe the buildings or preserves the parking on those sites and brings us a new vision of the, you know, in the minutes that I spend and hours that I spend as a member of the CDA, you know, I'm limited by that time constraint and by imagination, and there's no harm in seeing what people could propose. So I'm all for putting out for RFPs to see what we get, see if there is interest.
Mhm.
Because it is a hypothetical, maybe no one is interested, but I'd like to see it. And I'd just also add that in the 2 years that we have been studying it, the housing crisis has gone in the wrong direction and has not gotten, our job hasn't gotten easier. Although commercial real estate has gotten more favorable actually in that time. So in terms of acquiring a site, the DPW outside the village, those prices have, that landscape has altered dramatically. So
Thank you. Trustee Stokbrand?
So when you say the commercial real estate has altered a lot, do you mean it's gotten more expensive?
no,
It's gotten less
yeah, the fever subsided, and the properties that we're selling seconds are now sitting. Some of the projects got mothballed that were being planned, and so, but the housing crisis hasn't. Everyone thought maybe after the pandemic and everything, prices in Shorewood went like this, that it would come back down or something, but it had. Prices have just gotten less affordable here. But commercial industrial real estate is weakening.
sadly, interest rates have. Thank you. So I guess what I've been thinking about, because I would agree that we haven't met for a long time as a CDA. And I think as a group, we never had the big discussion about what does success look like? What do we want? I would agree that we generally said we want buildings, we want housing that is integrated. I know Whitefish Bay now has, I believe the entire building will be affordable housing. Early in our discussions, I hope someone can verify.
that
We
accurate?
did decide,
We have the developer here, actually.
I believe that
It's not
building is all
100%
affordable
true.
housing.
Mhm.
So you need to speak into a microphone if you're going to be heard for the
Anyway,
people
let
online.
me, if I might, should I just finish or should we take questions as?
You can finish. I thought there was a point of clarification
It
was
of
clarified.
accuracy.
It's all subsidized housing. That's a fair statement.
No.
Okay.
If,
Sure.
well,
It's not
go ahead.
subsidized
so Grant, if
as
you're gonna
income.
base,
Go ahead.
if you're gonna base a position on that fact, then it might be good to have the
Sure.
clarification to know.
My name is Brian Spurl. I'm the owner of Spurl Commercial, and we are the developers of the Whitefish Bay Affordable Housing Project. And so your question is whether or not it's 100% affordable. The answer is yes, it's 100% affordable, but it's at the 60% area median income threshold. And
Rather
so-
than
so
like
within
30.
that, we do qualify for what's referred to as low-income housing tax credits.
What is the 60% for that project? Can I ask?
Pardon me?
What is that number in that neighborhood?
It ranges between $40,000 and $50,000 in
Oh.
income.
Okay.
The rents are between 1,000 and for one bedroom, it's roughly 11 and a quarter. For a two bedroom, it's 1350. There are a couple of 50% units in the building as well.
Thank you very much.
Which will be closer to $1,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. By the way, I did a little looking online today and we do have non-subsidized units available in the village right now. I looked at, there are units available for less than that in the village, 2-bedroom units. But we've all known, I mean, we said this very early in the discussion, we have affordable housing already in the village. The question is, I believe, how do we try to diversify the people who are moving into the village? And so that to me is still the question that we haven't answered. And again, I'm looking at like, what does success mean? Does success mean we add 10 more units? Does it mean we add 20 more units? And I'm wondering, I would like to see that discussion fleshed out at the CDA level a little more about what we do. My concerns about going after these parking lots is, number one, we had a parking study, we changed the parking regulations. We removed the utility. We've got new construction with a lower parking limit. We're post-COVID. We updated the commercial zone. To me, parking in the village right now is sort of we're in a shakedown cruise. And before I go after those lots, I would want to know, are we where we want to be with those? Do we need them? I talked to the guy who owns Lada, the driving school. He's been there for 28 years. He said, I'm probably gonna have to shut down if I can't use that lot. These are some of the things, I'd like to know, the senior resource center, other options I just wonder about going after the parking lots, the public parking lots. If we want to be, the busy Brady Street, the busy State Street, not that I think we ever will be, when I'm in those areas and I'm visiting and I'm not riding my bike there, the first thing I do is look for the P icon because I want to see where there's public parking so I can use those restaurants and those shops and things. I just want to make sure before we go down that road that we've really looked at those 3 public lots to make sure down the road, we are like, wow, I really wish we had kept those and maybe put in a parking structure. I think the thing about them too is the way they're situated, not including Village Hall. It's a long way if you're going to Kensington and you want to go to a restaurant or a shop there, the nearest parking structure is Metro Market. If you're on the south end, the nearest parking structure is the one behind kitty corner from Walgreens. If you're elderly, that's a long walk. The one at Menlo is a lot closer if I want to go to Harry's or the restaurants on the other side of the street. If I'm at Kensington and I need a car, it's a lot closer than walking from Metro Market, or otherwise I'm going into the neighborhoods. I think that's another thing we need to consider before we start looking at these lots. I would love to see us go with one of the lots in the city that looks really bad. The retail front is in bad shape. And try to work with a landlord, as is happening in Whitefish Bay. You're taking something that looks really bad and you're going to turn it into something that I'm sure will look a lot better. And to me, that'd be a more meaningful way to go than going after the parking right away. I have another question about the CDA role. So we pivoted from rental offense, then we went to the value of home ownership and getting equity. So now, is it my understanding that without any discussion as a group, we're pivoting back to affordable housing on village-owned lots? We're going back to the rental offensive? We surely don't expect condos. My understanding is the condo market financing is nowhere. So without a discussion of the group, that seems ill-advised. I do think that it's painful that it's taking us this long, but to put the money into the hands of people so they can come to Shorewood. But I don't necessarily think that's
Can I interject something? This is Joe
negative.
right here.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's making any decisions. You seem like you thought we've gone this far on the path. I'm curious if they can preserve that parking and do something. I think a request for a proposal, you've just made all these assumptions down the path of what we're doing. We're still in the decision-making process, and part of that decision should be informed by professionals giving us their opinion of what's possible on these sites, rather than us.
Hey,
discussing.
can I interject with a point of order? Sorry.
Yeah, Wesley, I was going to go with you next.
Yeah, I was just making sure that I'm still in the queue to speak.
You are. I went to Trustee Stokebrand as a member of the CDA.
Got it.
Thank you.
I have one more thing. I guess my question is at the end of the day is so non-binding. So does that mean, it would seem to me, anyone who wants to come forward with an idea for this is going to say, well, they're going to need the specifics, right? They're not going to just like do pie in the sky. They're going to say, well, you need any parking? Who's the person who's going to say, oh, yes, we do. We need 7 spots for seniors. We need, or we need space for, I guess, where's the transparency in this request for proposals, request for information? Who's the one who's going to say, here's what we have to have? Is it going to be staff?
Yeah, in the memo, it describes a process in that it would go with the, go back to the CDA to develop the parameters then it would go to the village board for approval before being circulated. So the RFP process would include public meetings where those parameters and priorities are discussed.
And I would add to that, that at least the way I would see this working is I don't want us to get in the weeds of trying to define exactly what it is we want to see. The whole point of doing an RFP, Joe's point, was to figure out what is possible. And hopefully we get a lot of great ideas that we can then sift through and discuss. So I don't really want to see us get into trying to predefine what we want to see. I really want to see us say, hey, we want housing. We have sites. People, please come and give us ideas and present us with ideas.
Then why don't we put all the sites on the list?
If we
Why just the
can-
village parking?
All the sites are on the list.
Yeah, so why,
The-
what difference? does it
Excuse
make?
me, just point of order. We, the reason in the memo, it says that the village parking lots are the most feasible for affordable housing because there's no cost involved. And they also, we have control over them. And so we have more control about what moves forward. So if you can, I'm sorry about the interruption, but if you can wrap up your comments so that we can move to Mr. Warren, that would be appreciated.
Okay, I guess well, we do have $2 million, and with the $2 million, you would think we could have some control over another site. I just would like to see all those sites put out there. If we're going to do an RFP, why would we limit it with the village lots? And I'm wondering how much staff time, I'm concerned about the staff time on something that's really kind of like a fishing expedition to say, what can you do for us? And I'm wondering about staff time in the work plan.
Thank you. Mr. Warren?
Yeah, thank you. My dog has started crying on cue. And going last, I'll try to not echo. There are elements of what everyone that's spoken. There are elements of things that they've said that I agree with. But I'll kind of start at the beginning. You know, I was also part of the village board that voted to extend the TID and fund this $2 million. I think there's an expectation within the village, and certainly when I made the vote, there was an expectation that we take action, and we take action relatively expediently. And obviously there's political realities, there's structural realities, there's a lot of things we're trying to work through, but I want to make sure that we maintain a commitment to keeping this process going. And I think, and that's not to say that everyone in the room is not doing that. I think we all are committed to it, but I just wanted to note that I was part of that original decision, and moving this forward is something that I think is important to us all. So when I come at this, it's thinking of it that way. How do we continue to move forward, even if it's incremental baby steps? Starting with the DPW yard, you know, I realize that since I've rolled off the board, there have been a ton of discussions in the DPW yard, the feasibility of keeping it, moving it, remediation, anything that needs to happen there. And I have not been privy to those discussions. So it's hard for me to opine on whether or not the DPW should move or not, frankly. And I don't want to get into the weeds on that. So I'll just say, if the DPW were to move, and again, not assuming that it's going to, you know, I would certainly be open to exploring RFPing that site, looking at options for affordable housing. I do agree with Jessica that, you know, I think we want to look at, it's a beautiful site. There's a lot of beautiful historic buildings. Is there preservation that could go on there? Is there remediation that needs to take place? But I think it's worth looking at just to see what's out there. I'm on the same wavelength with some of the lots. I do understand some of the parking concerns. I'm hopeful that some of the parking changes that we made going back years would help to alleviate those if we were to develop the lots. But I think at this point, it's kind of incumbent on us to look at what's out there. And probably for me, the most expedient way to do that is through RFPs. I think that we need more information, and I don't know that we're equipped to figure out exactly how to do this ourselves. You know, as Joe said, we're kind of limited by our own imaginations, and getting people in the room who do this might help us to outline what we can and, frankly, what we can't do in this space. You know, right now, I appreciate Trustee Stokebrand's comments on the need for transparency, the need to bring the community into the process. I completely and totally agree. But I think right now we're just I view it as let's keep the ball rolling here and let's see what's out there. So I'm open to exploring these ideas. I'm open to RFPing some of these sites. Again, we're not making a commitment here. I don't know that we're certainly not saying we're going to go forward with this. It's just something where I think we need more information, and I'm glad, going back all the way back to the beginning, that we're meeting again regularly and starting to explore how to use the proceeds of this TIF. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the CDA that are on the Zoom that I can't see? Okay, thank you. I think at this point, I would like to hear from members of the public who have taken the time to come this evening, if you would like to speak. And then we would go to the village board members. For people that would like to speak, members of the public, please come to the microphone, speak as loud as I'm speaking into the microphone, say your name and your address, and please keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes if you can. I mean, please keep them to 2 minutes if you can, 3 minutes max. The topics of this evening are either one. So whatever you're here to speak on, this is your time to share that information. Okay.
I read the notification and I must have misread it because I thought that there's
If you can.
I thought there's more of an I thought you were soliciting feedback, and so I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. Although your comments in the beginning suggest that it's a foregone conclusion that the DPW is not staying at the Morris site.
No, it's a foregone conclusion that we need to replace the facility.
Okay, good.
We do know that the site does not meet the needs of what we need in a facility, so therein lies the rub. But that's why starting to talk about relocation and getting more information about that is necessary to make an informed decision about the future of that site and the facility.
I'm going to read.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to read.
Would you be able to just state your name and address, please?
J. Sorensen, 1916 East Kensington Boulevard. I obviously don't do this very often. I'm in favor of option 1, which is to remain at the DPW site to build a workable facility at the existing site. The decision to close the existing yard and the decision to build a facility outside of Shorewood are forever decisions. We won't be able to financially step back from these in the future. I worry about this because of the unknowns for the future. What happens if the legislature decides to force a reduction in property taxes and government-provided services? Will trash reduction be lost as an amenity, with residents paying for services to a third-party vendor? Will we be compelled to combine services with Whitefish Bay for streets and utilities? These scenarios would certainly reduce the facility footprint. Moving to a new site will increase travel times for workers to and from Shorewood. Is the loss of this efficiency greater than the advantages gained by the new facility? One option which I don't think has been considered is the elimination of the parking lot at the Morris site as a way to gain facilities area. I'm guessing that this is used for employees, but there are employees who work up and down Oakland and Capitol Avenues who do not have the benefit of dedicated parking. I know this from personal experience because employees and customers park every day on my street, which is Kensington Boulevard. I do not lament the loss of the existing facilities, structures at Morris. These were built long ago and for a specific era and purpose. They have admirably served their purpose, and it's time for these to be retired. If this site is rendered unused, it would be a mistake to repurpose these buildings as additional community facilities or our existing inventory, which includes underutilized sites such as Hubbard Park Lodge, the River Club, and the Youth Pavilion. I imagine Hubbard Park alone will require significant expenditures in the future for upkeep, and we need not spread these funds further. I will close by expressing a concern for the unintended consequences of placing crucial village resources outside the jurisdiction of our village. We don't know what could transpire by placing the workplace for so many employees in the city of Milwaukee in terms of future labor regulations. Please keep the public works business of Shorewood in Shorewood.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to be heard? Yes, Ms. Braddock. That's okay, of course. So name, address, and 3 minutes if you can.
Okay, I'm Rosie Braddock, 4248 North Ardmore Avenue. And I would just like to share that I agree with Jessica Carpenter. In relationship to the historic buildings at the DPW site, I would like to see us attempt to save these and incorporate them into affordable housing if that's the direction that we go into. I think they're really special, and I don't know if we're considering this, but probably you are, that if the site is nominated for the National Registry of Historic Spots, and I believe it's possible it would be accepted if we nominated it. Excuse me. Then if a historic site is renovated for the purposes of generating income, it can be eligible for millions of dollars, at least 2 million, in grants and tax credits. So that's something I would like us to consider. And also, when we're putting out RFPs, to me, it seems reasonable to include as much information as possible about what we want to have happen on that site. Like with form-based zoning, then it makes it easier for the for the construction companies or developers to come back with a reasonable proposal.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Hi, Rosina Bloomingdale, 3958 North Stowell Avenue. And when we're talking about affordable housing, I am very curious as to how this community is defining affordable housing. And so, knowing the 60% and then, but that's in Whitefish Bay based on their income status, and we're in a similar vein with that. And so if we're doing affordable housing, I would really like to see it be a number that is actually affordable to a wide income population group. And I know that that is what you guys are talking about, is a more integrated economic, but having that clearly defined, even if you're putting it out for RFPs, having some parameters is always critical to having that done. If you want to stifle creativity, we don't want a lot of parameters. But that would be my biggest request, because then we can not only service a lot of people with varied incomes, but we can also service a lot of people with different age groups. And so Shorewood has one of the biggest older adult populations. And so we would want to continue to have those older adults within this community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I would, in case you saw the memo online, the webpage that we have for affordable housing that has all the recordings of the educational, it defines all those terms. So thanks. It's a great resource. Shout out Village Manager Ewald. All right. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Aubring, put you on the spot. CDA. CDA soon to be.
I'm Mitchell Opping. I live at 4512 North Larkin Street. Just gonna join the CDA in a few days. I'm very much on board with what the president is saying. I think we need to have a good understanding of what is possible with these sites. Whether that is something that keeps the number of parking spots that we have, or increases it, decreases it. I think that's important information to know. And I don't think we should limit giving people places to live because we're afraid that we won't know where to put their car.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for everyone that took the time to come this evening to listen and to share your perspectives. Any last call for public comment? All right, if you think of anything after the meeting, you can always email. At this time, I'd like to move to hear from the members of the village board. I'm going to ask Trustee McGovern, who is in Barcelona as we speak, to speak first, since you never know how long that connectivity is going to last.
I appreciate that. Plus, it's 2:15 here, so that's very helpful. I would just like to sort of echo what a number of people on the CDA have already said, and just kind of state my overall preferences on both of the agenda items. I'll start with the potential for doing RFPs on village-owned parking lots. I'm very much in favor of that. We have a real crisis in terms of housing and a climate crisis as well, which is, one of the solutions is building homes where you already have infrastructure, communities like Shorewood. So I think that's real important. And, we have plenty of parking in Shorewood. I know it's not always easy. There's not always a spot right when right in front of where you want to be. But, when I'm by myself, I bike or I walk. When I'm with my wife, who has a chronic illness, we drive everywhere in Shorewood. Even if it's a block or two away, we drive. And so, I'm very much aware, I'm very much sensitive to the needs of people who can't just walk 6 blocks or bike. But I've never really, in the 7 years that I've moved back to Shorewood, had any trouble finding parking close to where I wanted to be. So I would much prefer to see our village-owned properties used for affordable housing rather than car storage. And as you can see in the memo, we've been discussing some of these things since 2021. So I would like to move forward with going ahead with RFPs and seeing what kind of proposals are out there. And regarding the second item on the agenda, the DPW, I realize that's not quite as far along, but I'm certainly in favor of if we move the DPW into Milwaukee, I'd love to see more housing built there, possibly a mix of affordable and market rate housing. I feel like it would be important for the village to have some new revenue from either some market rate housing or some commercial amenities that could go in there. Would love to hear proposals from developers on whether they feel like they could make a convenience store or some other commercial type of use that would generate some revenue for the village, see if that would work. And I do agree, and I heard this a lot from out in the community, that people really want to see some of those historic buildings saved. And it would be my preference to see that main building when you first come into the DPW, to see if a developer could repurpose that into something, whether it be housing or a restaurant or something else like that. I think that's something we should look at when we're developing our RFP. But again, just to summarize, I'm all in favor of going ahead with RFPs on the parking lots in Shorewood and continuing the process to take steps to move the DPW and redevelop that into something that would really fit and really be an amenity to the village at that such a nice location right on the trail, right near the river. And I just think it's a great opportunity to make some progress on these issues that we've been talking about for many years. So I'll wrap up there, and I'll stay on just to hear the discussion and be ready for the vote when that comes.
Appreciated. All right, coming back to the floor, Trustee Lynn, Trustee Arndorfer, and then I'll close.
I'm happy to jump in here a little bit. So there's a lot going on here, but I think starting with the parking lots, this is an area where I kind of feel like I have some mixed emotions because on the surface, I would hate to lose, parking. But the flip side of that is that there is a housing crisis. More housing is necessary, and we do need to do our part to provide affordable housing. And that's something that the board has already voted on and said that they want that with the TID extension. And the other flip side of that is that we talk at our meetings here in the village board more than anything else, we talk about road safety. And roads are unsafe because of cars. And so, the more if you build it, they will come, is the saying in with roads. You know, if you build a parking lot, people will park there. If you build big roads, people will drive on them. And so, you know, if we have an opportunity to reduce a little bit of excessive parking in certain areas, you know, if I'd be okay with that. So I would be in favor of an RFP to look at those village-owned parking lots. I would say it would need to, what comes back to us would need to be a really good plan for me to be okay with it. But at the front end, I'm more than happy to look at it because it's parking and road safety are things that we look at all the time as it is. So I'm happy to look at an RFP for that. So I'd be in favor of developing an RFP for the village-owned parking lots. With regards to the DPW site, I think that's another huge issue. So, you know, with the site itself, we know that the site itself will not work for the Department of Public Works. If we want to keep the services that we have, we need to go to a different site that is larger and more convenient. I think we have done a good job. We did a good job the last couple of years of looking at potential sites, setting parameters for what that site would look like, what it would have on it, where it would be, how it would serve the village. And I think we need to take the next step of getting a broker to look for a site for us. And I think we need to just commit to that. With regards to the history of the site, this is an area where I have gone a couple different places, but when we had the presentation from the Shorewood Historical Society, that really changed my perspective on the site and the buildings itself. Because what I learned from that presentation from the Shorewood Historical Society was that the historical significance of the Department of Public Works, it lies less in the location and the building and more in the staff and the services. That's really what's valuable to our community. And that's where our value has been for 100 years. You know, we as a community value the services that are provided. We pride ourselves in receiving more and better services than other communities. Most importantly, we value the employees, the workers, the people who actually do that work for us every day of the week. And that's the way it's always been as long as I've lived here, as long as my wife has lived here, as long as my father-in-law has lived here, which is 70 years now. And, you know, when we look at the location itself, that location was chosen based on the railroad tracks. That's how they had all their equipment delivered and all their supplies delivered. So without the railway, then that location is now just in a residential neighborhood. It's just surrounded by houses. And the design, which I personally like and think is cool and old, it was designed by a military architect who designed armories. And that doesn't have a huge significance here in the village. But what we do have on the flip side is history like during the Great Depression, when our community leveraged the services of the Department of Public Works to provide work for unemployed residents. We got this community through the Great Depression by paying people who lived here, who were not normal Department of Public Works employees, to just build stuff here with, you know, federal money. And still today, we employ summer students over summer to help in the parks, water the flowers, things like that. And we have employees who have these long histories of work in the village and know the ins and outs of everything that we do. And I think, you know, those people who know the village the best, who know where all the pipes are, where everything is that's going on underneath us, who know where everything goes when we flush our toilets, those people, they're begging for a new site. And so I know that it just is what we need, and I'm happy to proceed with that. So for me, I'd be happy with an RFP for affordable housing on the village-owned parking lots, and I would definitely be happy with a request for interest information to solicit a partner to find a new public works site. I just think it's too important, and I think we have to move on that. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Trustee Arndorfer.
Thank you. First, I'm comfortable moving forward.
Oh, I thought of something while you were speaking, if I may. A couple of times it's come up, the idea about if the parking lots are redeveloped, that we would lose parking. There are lots of ways to retain public parking with redevelopments. We've done it with both parking structures that have been built in Shorewood. So it's not a net loss or anything necessarily. Those are all things that would go in a RFP, and we wouldn't decide those things tonight, but we would start collecting those sentiments and priorities. So thank you. So sorry, now it's for real.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm comfortable moving forward in developing an RFP for affordable housing on the village-owned parking lots. I think the library lot would be a tough nut to crack, relative to the, given the importance of that place as a community hub, and if we wanted to retain parking there, as well as allow for parking for residents, it's not clear to me immediately that the juice is worth the squeeze, but I'm not an expert, so I'd be interested in
Exactly.
seeing
That's
what
why
they
you,
have to offer.
that's why you call the experts.
There you go. On the second item, I would rather defer until the board can meet at least one more time just to hash out any final questions on that. I am very supportive in principle of developing on that site. However, as noted, we haven't discussed this as a board for 6 months at all. We haven't as a board, we haven't discussed affordable housing on that site as an option at all formally. I just think it's important to have at least that step take place just to make sure that we're all holding hands in terms of what direction we're going to move. That doesn't mean that everybody needs to agree necessarily, but I think there needs to be a common understanding of where we're at. I think the fact that we're missing 2 trustees tonight also speaks to why I think it would make sense to have another conversation on that topic, just to resolve any final questions to the extent possible. I know that making that decision would not be binding in terms of where we wind up, but I do think since we, began this discussion going all the way back to early 2023, the conversation hasn't always been a straight line, shall we say, and there's been some back and forth. So I'd rather just get things locked down, make a call on one or the other, and then proceed. So I'd rather defer so that we can meet again to discuss this as a full board.
Can you help me understand what you would be imagining that we would be locking down in that discussion? Because when we last, I agree that it's been 6 months. There has been communication during that 6 months, and there have been joint presentations on 2 occasions regarding opportunities. And also when we left off, as it says in the memo, it was clear that the only way to get more information in order to make a decision about whether to stay or go is to get a broker involved who can get informations about sites, and the village board would need the village manager needs direction in order to do that. And so I'm really surprised and wondering what would happen. We also have support from Trustee Ursink in writing. Trustee Kudo was invited to submit and to ask questions. Village manager did talk to everyone just to make sure, given this. So I need a little bit more information because I'm always in favor of having everybody present and all that, but it also has been, 2 to 3 years.
I'll just reiterate what I said.
I need to understand what information and questions are there about getting a broker to get us more information. What questions are remaining? Because I don't recall any.
It's been 6 months since we since we last met on this. I'm just interested, and this is the first time we've talked about affordable housing on other lots, so I think we can have a more holistic conversation. And just interested in understanding what the implications are from a financial standpoint depending on what options we take and the implications of that for the village.
And you feel that you need that discussion with the full board before getting more information that would just be that the only way we could get it is by taking this given direction tonight. And I know this is challenging. I don't usually ask questions like this of trustees, but when I opened the meeting and said that I expected everybody would have read the materials and contacted come prepared. It's surprising to me to just hear tonight that 6 months in putting something on hold for very clear reasons that we've heard from the village manager. It's a surprise to me. So it feels like we've done a lot of work to get to this place and made our best effort. And so while I respect the opinion I really need to know what would need to be brought forward to make that additional conversation worthwhile. And if you don't have anything else, I'd like you to just keep it in mind depending on, and let the village manager know.
All right.
Okay. Trustee Sokbrand, do you have additional comments from the
Yeah,
board
I would like to
perspective?
hope that we don't have to have everything vetted through the village manager before we have a meeting for a person to defend their position and then be questioned why they have to not be able to make a decision because the village manager didn't get the questions ahead of time. I think that's inappropriate. I also would like to defer on the second item, because for one thing, as the finance chair, we have never seen a financial piece about this. And that bothers me a lot. And so for that reason alone, we've also discussed collaboration, cooperation, and consolidation with other departments, other villages, other municipalities. I have assumed, but I probably should not have, that those talks were continuing. We haven't heard about that for months. And so I would like an update on that, because we don't know yet that we can't provide good, consistent services at the same level by working with other municipalities. And so until I know that that horse is absolutely dead, I'm not going to go. I think it took a lot of courage for the North Shore to merge their fire and rescue years ago. And clearly that was a good decision and it worked out well for everybody. And so until I know that we have looked at under every rock for that, we have not decided to move from the current site. And I know someone did mention, we did discuss possibly staying there and using the parking lot on Oakland and Menlo for employee parking, because that would make that site larger. I'd also like to see us consider moving the transfer station. I'd love to see that in River West. And then maybe we could fit everything where we are if we consolidated, did some collaboration and some cooperation with other municipalities. So I see us being a long way away from item number 2, and would favor deferral also. I do think we should look for affordable housing on the village-owned lots, but I would also like to see that for the other sites that were mentioned in the affordable housing presentation that Rebecca and Bart presented at the Madison the conference I was at also with Mr. Kraus. I would like to see us do an RFP for all of those sites, because residents complain to me about this building, that building, they look terrible. What can we do? I think we should really let people know that we think these buildings are bad for the site. We can do better than this, and let's look at affordable housing for those too. Why just put the village lots up?
Are you talking about private when you say the other place? You're talking about, can the village even put an RFP out for a privately owned property?
It's not a good use of time.
We can't do it at all.
You have
put
to
an
have,
RFP out of my house.
right.
Well, we've already labeled it up
Um,
for, it's in our site as possible housing sites.
Okay, thank
it's in
you.
our presentation.
Thank you.
So can we do it, or?
We're not deciding that tonight. That is covered in the memo also. And so it doesn't preclude us from taking up that issue in the future. But it doesn't relate to what's before us this evening. I'm not going to stop Manager Ewald from answering the question, but I just wanted to bring your attention. I am holding us accountable to what is in the memo.
It has never been my preference to put RFPs out on sites in which the private property owner has not been communicated with and in support, because it's typically been a non-starter. So one of the things that we try to do with the proposal process is to make it as clear as possible for whoever would be submitting a proposal. So if the landowner is not receptive or desires that, then I'm, not sure where that would be. To Trustee Stoprand's point, we just went through a pretty extensive process in the update of our comprehensive 2040 plan. And in that plan, we did identify the sites that you're talking about that are privately owned that may have a better or higher use and be receptive to redevelopment. So we still use that as a tool. Many times people come in and ask Bart, and you can comment for yourself, but it's kind of his ready reference of here's what we have as a village and here's what we've identified on the private side. But they would need to follow up with those private property owners in order to further explore what their receptiveness would be. Because that transaction would occur between developer and the private property owner.
Unless we got involved.
Correct.
That would be close to eminent domain, which we don't want to get into.
Well, I mean,
it's
that-
very unpopular.
It
But-
is,
Could I
but it's
follow
always,
up on that too?
it is it is a possibility, right?
Mhm.
I mean, so that's one.
The
that-
ideal, yeah.
One way to really think about this, and this is how I've been thinking about it, is, and Joe and I both being in real estate, I think we would agree on this. Tell me if I'm wrong. But if we put an RFP for these parking lots, what that is effectively going to do is let developers know we are open to discussing
Development.
more housing, especially housing with a subset of affordability, or maybe the whole thing is affordable. Once that word gets out there, all these other sites that every developer already knows is underutilized. There's nothing in this village that every major developer hasn't already looked at least 10 times over the last 10 years. So the idea that we as a village have to tell a developer that a building is ugly and one story and underutilized, they know. They all know. What we control 3 parking lots. We don't have to buy them. We don't have to sell them. We can develop them in partnership with a developer if we so choose, if it's a good idea, if we preserve parking, whatever the factors are that we want to put in the RFP. We need to get information. So the only way to do that is to ask for it. We can't put RFPs out on private property. It's not going to work. And
It's very unpopular. It really sends the
Right,
message.
and it's just-
Anyway,
it's
I
just not gonna-
understand the question though, and so I don't want to, we don't need to
it's
talk
out
about
there.
it more.
That the whole point, that's what I want to say.
Your point is taken.
It's out there. The idea's out there. Those properties are known.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if developers haven't been over the last 2 or 3 years trying to acquire properties that are privately owned to assemble larger parcels. I know it's happening. Joe, you know what's happening. That's happening out there.
Thank you. Trustee Lynn?
Yeah, so I mean, just a couple things to wrap up, and then I'm happy to make a suggested motion
I
here.
have some comments too.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I would just say, a couple of things. I mean, I think a lot of the questions that we have, a lot of questions that I have and that I've heard tonight, I think would be answered by what comes back from an RFP and an RFI. And I think with regards to the public works side, I understand the concern that we haven't had a ton of discussion on this recently, but we have had a ton of discussion on it over the past. I'd be okay with at least getting a partner to find a new site. Something I'm not okay with is reducing, consolidating services, eliminating services. I'm not okay with any of that at any level. I'm also not okay with us breaking the site apart. I didn't like that idea when it was proposed to us originally. I still don't like it. I want to keep it one site close to the village that's useful, functional, covers all of our needs, and sets us up well for the future.
Thank you, appreciated. My position is not going to be surprising, so I am in support of us moving forward. I do think that this step is critical. We have had a break for 6 months, and it's been 6 months too long. We have been at this point knowing that we needed to take this step to get more information, to make a final decision. We can't give that financial picture without information from a broker. And while technically the village manager, there's no ordinance saying that the village manager has to have village board approval to take that step. The reality is the public works site redevelopment has been a third rail conversation for 9 years. So, and with good reason. So we've taken those 9 years. The complaints were that we didn't have a policy about the use of TIF, that we weren't considering affordability and affordable housing aggressively enough, concerns around transparency, concerns about that village priorities weren't a part of economic development conversations in the past. And here now we stand 9 years later, we have a TIF policy. We have made a commitment to learn about affordable housing and to find out what concrete opportunities, and we've taken a very intentional approach around that and a very slow one to open to a lot of criticism around why we still have $2 million waiting. Although I can defend that in because of the steps that we've taken and all the work that we've been doing at the same time with our very lean staff. An RFP process moving forward is the most transparent that you are ever going to get with development. And so I am in favor of that 100%. We need the village manager and the director of planning need a very clear message from, at least a majority vote. I don't think we're going to get a unanimous vote, but needs that clear message. We also need a record. There's turnover. Development takes time. And we lose a lot, and development is one of the most easy places for misinformation to just spiral out of control. So what's presented to us tonight in this memo is very well thought out. It is very well researched. It's backed up by hours of meetings by very smart people, a lot of it, and people that came before us. All that information is available for anyone who is not aware of it or needs a refresher. By encouraging communication with the village manager to be prior to meetings, it is not, I only say that because I can't talk to people before meetings because it's a violation of open meeting law potentially. So our procedure is questions, village manager, forwarded to the board so that everybody has that same information coming into the meetings, and that's not new. So nothing here tonight is new. The only thing different is meeting on a Thursday night with our colleagues at the same time on the CDA, which I think is a great efficiency, because if we didn't do that, what would happen when the village board convened on this is to say, well, I want to hear from the CDA. So we've really started to stack our meetings so that we have the most productive process, that's available to us. So thank you for everybody's time and attention to that. So with, I think that in terms of the public works, the only way to get more information regarding anything that's been brought up tonight about the future of public works services and facilities in the village of Shorewood is to get that information about alternative sites, to get that financial picture, to get that operational picture. We have been having regular updates from the village manager. The reality is that the conversations with other municipalities are not moving forward, not because we're not having them, it's because they're not interested. The potential partners that's the most interested is the city of Milwaukee. And so Whitefish Bay is not interested. They want us to keep a transfer station so that they can keep using it. They don't have land for that. They're not interested in consolidating. And that's where things are at. It's not a criticism. It's just, that's where it's at. So to take the time to hope that that would come to fruition, consolidation takes a period of years. I think it might have taken 12 years with the fire department. 19, sorry. So to do that is basically saying that it's acceptable for us that our public works employees are working in substandard conditions, which thank you for the inspiring speech about public works. You said it all. And then I think also that this action is a statement of our values, which people have been asking for. And so again, it's kind of like we've been talking about affordability and that we care about that and that's a priority. And so, you know, this is where the rubber hits the road and it seems like an incremental step and it seems like it could be, you know, unpopular or it's hard. But you know, these are some of the biggest decisions that we're going to make in this, you know, generation. And I'm proud. And I know that the people in this room and the people that couldn't make it tonight are the right people to do the work. And I couldn't be more excited about it. So with that, I could probably, oh, and I also say on the preservation front, I think that it's fine for us to put that in an RFP and we don't need to decide that tonight. All we need to do is to take that issue. But I am going to say that I really am in a place to put people first and our employees are that, and then potential people that, you know, could live in Shorewood or stay in Shorewood because of the decisions that we make. And that's definitely a priority. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't support alternatives, but it does mean that I'm ready to get that information to know what's available to us. So with that.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to put my thoughts out there. You know, one thing that former President Obama and his staff had an inside joke when you mentioned things are hard. They had a inside joke that said hard things are hard. And that is true. I mean, doing difficult things is difficult. So with that, I would say I would move to make a motion here. I would move to direct staff to develop an RFP for affordable housing on the village-owned parking lots and develop an RFI for requests for interest/information to solicit a partner to find a new public works site.
I was second. Oh, thanks, Matt. All right, we have a motion by trustee Lynn, seconded by trustee McGovern. Any further discussion? I would just extend to trustee Arndorfer that I know it's unusual for me to square off in a bit, and especially in Wisconsin, I'm East Coast, so. But I would ask for your support because I think that it is safe to take this step and then see what comes back. And if you just choose not to, I completely understand and respect that. With that, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay, so we have a vote of 3 yays, right? 1, 2, 3. 1 no, 1 nay, and 1 abstention. So we will move forward. Village manager, do you have the direction? Any other questions for us? All right. Hearing none, that concludes our meeting for this evening, and I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And first I should say thank you again for everybody's time and talent for the CDA to be here this evening. Sorry, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, we stand adjourned at 7:47. Thanks for your time, everyone.